Welcome to episode 10 of the Mesopotamia series. In this episode, we're going to be taking care of creating all the farms and villages on this side of the city-state. So, as you can see, I've created a sort of rough outline using dead bushes, bamboo, and lapis lazuli blocks of a primary canal that's going to empty out in this sort of dry riverbed. I also planned out where I want a secondary and a tertiary canal to be. This diagonal one, right here, will be the secondary canal. It'll carry water to all of the farms in this direction towards the pillager outpost. We won't worry about that for now. And the tertiary canal is this one right here. Of course, we're going to be needing to clear out all of the terrain, make it flat, just to make it easier to build on, but we'll deal with that later. But you might be wondering, how are you going to build the two villages over there and all the canals when it took you all of last episode to make this one village and this farmland? Well, off camera, I went ahead and made a command block system that should make it easier for me to build future villages. Basically, what it does is it allows me to copy-paste these two houses using spawn eggs. So, this first command block basically copies and pastes the house to any entity named House 1, and the second one kills any entity named House 1, so the same house doesn't spawn multiple times. And the spawn eggs I've used for this are endermite spawn eggs, just because endermites only take one block, so it makes placing down the houses a lot easier and a lot more precise. So let's go ahead and place down our first house. So the first house was sort of hanging off the side of a cliff, but every time you use this sort of setup, the orientation of the placement changes, so I just needed to get used to it. As you can see, this second house I placed down, perfect placement, doesn't need to be moved, doesn't need to be destroyed, and from there I was pretty much ready to go and I knew how to use the system, and I went ahead and created the village. So here's the final result. It's just 5 houses, nothing special, but the next step is to start actually digging out the primary canal. In ancient Mesopotamia, canals were a must, as because of the semi-arid climate, any agriculture needed some sort of irrigation as there wasn't enough rainfall. Canals could be different sizes depending on the water demand of crops, the command area or the area that needs to be irrigated, and the type of agriculture being practiced. In this build, I am mostly using border strip irrigation. That's what I'm trying to portray. Primary canals were 8 to 12 meters in width. However, I decided to make it 4 meters or 4 blocks in width, just to make the build a bit easier. And primary canals could be 10 to 15 kilometers in length, but again, since we're in Minecraft, that's a few thousand blocks, so it's a bit less in this build. It's only 100 if that. And here I'm adding the levees to the side of the primary canal to ensure that the flood doesn't destroy the nearby landscape, and that's the sort of final result. In today's episode, making a head dam with Q-Lion MC. So the head dam was the structure that regulated the water intake of the primary canals. So on top of a solid foundation, a clay pipe, or up to 3 clay pipes, would be placed, which allowed the canal to intake water, and the water level could be regulated by simply plugging the clay pipes when there's too much water and unplugging them when more water was needed. On top of these pipes, a layer of wood would be placed down. Remember that ancient Mesopotamia didn't have a plentiful supply of wood, so whatever wood was available would be used, including, and most often, the trunks of fruit trees. On top of this, reed mats would be placed, which were woven together to give the whole thing some structural integrity, and the whole thing would be sealed by an intentional mixture of mud and straw. And of course I'm using dirt because we don't really have that in Minecraft. These structures are not meant to last forever. They were not permanent structures. Every once in a while, someone was sent out to see if these things needed maintenance, and every once in a while, the whole canal would be needed to be changed because it would fill up with sediment, so a new head dam would need to be constructed. This was not something that was practiced, but I'm placing down grass so it'll grow on the head dam. This has been Head Dams with Q-Line MC. So immediately after the head dam, sediment would be worn away by the incoming water, and it would create sort of a small pond, which was useful for storing fish and for docking small craft such as boats. And now I'm using a fill command to fill up the primary canal. Unfortunately, Because of the way how fill commands work, they add water sources, but then running water takes up all of the other empty space. And since I'm telling the command to fill up areas with air with water, and there's already water in these spaces, then the whole area doesn't get filled up with water source blocks. Rather, just some sources and a lot of running water. So once I was done filling in the primary canal with water, it was time to start flattening out the terrain, starting with this hill. Once the hill was gone and the terrain was flat, I planned the continuation of the secondary canal and the start of 2 more tertiary canals. Secondary canals were often 4 to 6 meters in width. However, since the primary canal was already 4, I decided to make the secondary canal 2 blocks or 2 meters in width. The secondary canal will drain off and end in this natural pond. Here I'm digging out the tertiary canals. They were usually 2 meters in width, but in this case I'm only making them 1 meter. Once I was done digging all the canals, I decided to plan out where I wanted all the farms to be off camera. Despite the number of farms that I'd planned out, I felt like there weren't enough of them. They didn't cover enough of the ground. So I had my eyes on this corner of the terrain that was unused and unflattened. So I decided to fill in this area to be used as additional farmland. Once I was done with that, I started adding the levees to the side of the secondary canal. Again, we're using sandstone blocks for the levee, and I was satisfied with the fact that these fit in with the terrain more than the trapdoors that I used last episode. I did experiment with different alternatives off camera, but I stuck with the trapdoors for now. And for the levees for the farmland, I decided 1 sandstone block was too high, so I'm using sandstone slabs. Then to avoid the fill command issue with the primary canal, here I'm placing lapis lazuli blocks where I want the water to be. Not only that, I'm also removing all of the sand where I want the actual farmland to be. However, I'm not going to be immediately placing down grass blocks. I'm also using a fill command to fill in the entire secondary canal with lapis lazuli blocks. It's not a precise thing, but I'll just remove the unwanted ones. And instead of swapping out the sand for grass blocks, I'm using a fill command to fill in all of the farms with the farmland. I would have filled them in with farmland immediately, but they would have dried up without water. And now I'm turning all of the lapis lazuli into water. And the difference between using a fill command or just filling it in by hand was amazing. It went by so fast and had no problems with it. Then it was time to do the same thing with the grass. I simply used a fill command to convert it all to farmland. Last episode, I probably accomplished so little because I didn't utilize any of these commands. Hopefully this will make the construction of further farmland a lot quicker and easier. And here's sort of the final layout of the farmland. I am pretty satisfied with how it turned out. The only part that annoys me is this little farm over here. I wanted to make it look like every single space of land that was available was being used, but that just seems inefficient. Now it was time to place down the final village. And I placed the first house on farmland. But the subsequent houses, those were expertly placed. Bam. And look at this third house. I'm going to use it to remove the command blocks. Bam. The village is a bit spaced out, but I wanted to make sure there was enough houses, and not only that the villagers could detect the composters that were next to the farms that were kind of far away. And that's all for today's episode. So if you liked, consider subscribing, maybe leave a comment, leave a like, and I'll catch you in whatever I post next.